Ladies and gents, this is ML's Like Teen Spirit. Today I've got Kat with me. Kat, welcome.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm really good. Look, thanks for joining. Thank you for the support. Kat, this is the first time you've been with me, so we should start this with an intro, please. Could you take 1 minute and tell everybody what it is you're doing, what you're about, please?
Sure thing. So my name's Dowden-King. I'm the head of marketing for Orbition Group, which is a recruitment organisation here in the UK. We serve the data analytics and AI space. We do that in two ways primarily. We do our executive search, so we go find those amazing data leaders for organisations, but we also do the standard kind of recruitment piece as well. So we also do a huge element in the community space, which is what I look after. So I look after our mentorship program, our magazine, our podcast, various other bits and pieces that we do. I mean, I don't want to bore us all to death to start with, but yeah, so I look after a fair bit and I absolutely love it. And I'm excited to talk about some of that today, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. Look, thanks for joining. And I feel like I've got imposter syndrome, Kat. I've seen your podcasts and all your output. It's so professional. I feel like a cowboy most of the time, and especially so today. So be gentle with me. This interview, though, we had an idea together. So I have been trying to get people to come on, talk to me about life in data in management. I was inspired by these old statements of like data scientist, sexiest job of the 21st century, and all of those old things. And I wanted people to come and talk about, well, what is life really like when they're in senior roles? And the idea that we had is to sort of move it back one step
Yeah.
and sort of talk through how people can begin to prepare themselves. So if they're currently like a team, in the team, senior analyst, something like this, and they've got their eyes upwards, what can they begin to do to prepare for the next step as they're going to move into leadership, and actually just increase the probability that it's going to be successful when they try? So it's kind of your idea. Would you like to introduce the topic a little bit for me, please?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm so thankful that you've given me a platform to talk about this, because it's something that I don't think we cover enough. And I say the royal we of the data analytics space of you go out on Google or ChatGPT, there is a whole load of content out there about, being technical, being on the ground, grassroots, being epic at your job. And there's lots of content out there about being an epic data leader. I like to think I produce some of that myself. But there is a bit of a chasm for, okay, but how do we get there? How do we go from being on the ground in the team, rolling our sleeves up, to now being sat at the board level and, doing all the great things that data leaders do? And this really became apparent to me as I was, working on the mentorship program that I mentioned earlier. So as part of that program, we ask people when they come on board as mentees, we say, what is it you really are wanting out of this program? And I would say a good 80% of these people who are, like you've mentioned, senior managers, they might be in that kind of director or even head of title. And they say, you know what, I really want to know how to get to the next level, because either I'm currently the most senior person in my organization, or there's only one more senior person in my organization and I don't really want to talk to them about how to get their job, because that would be awkward.
Right. Yeah.
And so they come and be part of the program, and we partner them with chief data officers or people more senior than themselves, and they have that discussion. And I think what's really challenging about that answer is there's no one route. And that is data analytics summed up as a problem, is that it's very, very niche and according to each organization. I mean, one chief data officer could be a director in another organization. One senior analyst could be a de facto CDO in another, depending on the size and maturity and industry and things like that. So when it comes to how do I become the CDO or how do I become more senior, it is very dependent on the culture of your organization. Where's the maturity at? Where's the literacy at? Where are your skills at? And to be honest, that's kind of where I think the conversation between us today, John, is probably more useful, is actually looking at ourselves rather than the environment. Because I could tell you to do, that you need 5 key things of your organization, but if your organization isn't there right now, that's not overly helpful. But I can give you some steering and some guidance on things that you can do as an individual to help, kind of get yourself, in a more competitive place, whether that is through promotion at your current company, or whether that is, you know, going out and seeking another opportunity. So I guess the first place we could start is really around mindset. And this is something that I think a lot of data people, when they get right, it's almost like a light bulb goes off, and you can see in, you know, I've been very lucky to meet so many, you know, hundreds and thousands of data practitioners over my career. And it's funny that you watch people grow as you know, you meet at events and stuff, and you realize, oh, something's changed about you. Your kind of aura has changed. And I think mindset is a big piece of that. And it makes me think of an article which appeared in the magazine in October, which was authored, penned by Nick Vazudis, who is a fantastic friend of mine. He's a brilliant consultant. And he told a story in that article about how, after he delivered some training, this one basic data team saved £200,000 and 6 months of work for asking one question. They said, okay, we can do this capability, guys. That's no issue. But who's actually going to use it in this country? Room went silent. And then it came back 2 users. Months of work, resource, and like I say, 200K saving, one question. And that, I loved that example because it's exactly what I'm talking about here around that mindset shift. Rather than going, okay, thank you for giving me the task, run away, go do it amazingly, bloody brilliant. It's going to be fantastic. Here you go, hand it back to the business. That mindset shift of going, okay, you've given me what I need to do, but hang about, what's the value here? What's the outcome? What's you know, so beyond output, coming into that outcome driven nature of going, is this actually helpful? And like I say, imagine that, you know, you're working on something for months at a time, lots of resource, really expensive, and then to find out it's only actually going to impact 2 people because it's not really a core part of that country's, you know, operating system, versus another country where it's, you know, a big part of that. So I think that mindset piece of, and as Nick put it himself, it's going from order taker to value creator. And I think that is really key. So if we peel that back as to what you can do yourself, it's about building that confidence to push back a little bit. And that is really scary. And that's not a data thing. That's anyone, right? In marketing, finance, whoever, you know, turning around to the big boss, the big cheese, sat at the big table and going, you sure? Is that the best idea? That's really scary. But that's the thing that's going to get you noticed and grow, because guess what? If I can now turn around and say, you know what, big boss, I've just saved you 200K, that's pretty noticeable, because I could have just gone away and done that project, but I didn't. I challenged. And so for me, that mindset piece is really, really key.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm on the edge of my seat, desperate to speak. You know, because I recognise the some of this comes down to, if you're like team lead and you move into those roles as well, you sometimes let you do that in your own management where you work with your boss, but on your team level, sometimes there was a trend. I'm a bit out of it now, but there would be a trend to have a business partnering approach, which was a bit like, and now it's become agile, where, you know, the analysts or whatever kind of get assigned to, you're on retention, you're on customer, you're on acquisition, and they get allocated like this, with the idea being they're all closer. But a consequence is sort of business units get used to just asking lots of questions because this person is business partner to them. And then it moves into this whole, this is for another video, but, well, what is an insight? So the answering of a question in a rapid fire style, maybe a person feels more secure that they get the answer, but by and large, they're not really game changing in any sense. It's confirmation of an existing thought. It's not like, how do we use this data to drive something to forwards or to the next level? So that I'm thinking immediately when you say this, with the mindset shift, there's the individual part, and then how you're controlling your unit if you're moving into management, and being cognizant of this, because you know, I've seen the wheel spinning on analytics groups, and they answer 10,000 questions a year. But it's like you said, then it's like, oh, right, well, we've changed something over here and doesn't really change the experience, doesn't really affect a metric. So yes, it's an important point from your own capacity, and then as you're doing leadership stuff, making sure everyone is following this idea.
And the thing is, I think there is this myth that and we'll just call them the team, don't care about the bigger picture. Everyone cares about the bigger picture, as long as you're not giving it as war and peace on a daily basis. People need to feel their work is meaningful. People need to feel, and this is just, basic human psychology. We don't just want to be working for working's sake, 9 to 5 or whatever your kind of work makeup looks like. We want to feel meaningful. So if you provide your team that macro picture and allow them and afford them that opportunity to ask questions about it, why are we doing that? And I think we've got to realize that we are more mature now. 10 years ago, it may have been okay to say, well, we're doing it because we've been told to. I think data has earned the seat at the table now. We're starting to see value being created, not everywhere, not all organizations, not all industries. There's levels to this game, but we've earned that place at the table. And to maintain that, we need to start acting like others would. You wouldn't have, a CFO saying, okay, we're going to do this, and then expect their team to just go along blindly with it. There's going to be some challenges there to say, hang on, this number says this, or my team's, experience and insights are suggesting this. There is a conversation there. And I think we need to be big and brave now and say, actually, is this the right way forward? And again, this friction, and a very good friend, Davin Crowley-Sweet, always talks about this, who's the CDO for National Highways, talks about this professional friction. We really, and again, this isn't even just unique to the data space, we really dislike that friction, right? And he often references the fact that we always say, oh, we'll take it offline, we'll take it into another meeting. No, have that conversation now, because there's disagreement. Why is there disagreement? Why do you see it from a different perspective? Because that compromise, that growth, is going to land up being so much more valuable than one person just either backing down entirely or the conversation just being walked away from. And I think that's, again, if we go back to the original question about how you can move from that more junior position into senior leadership, it's not running away from those hard conversations and actually going, I'm invested in this. I'm invested in my, selfishly in my own growth, but also the company's growth, because oftentimes they are two of one of the same thing.
So let's recap it. The mindset piece is step one of this. So it's a stronger alignment to value, making sure others follow you along with this.
Yeah.
And we're really saying, learning how to say no and how to work around that effectively. And the last part is more like, being able to, it's not conflict, but, collect alternate opinions and work with others to land in a happy place. Once both needs have been considered or both perspectives have been considered, learning how to do some of that will stand people in good stead for their step into management or further on the leadership journey. What else is on your list, Kat? What else can we add?
So I mean, obviously for listeners who've followed me for a little while, I think it would be amiss to not talk about leadership branding. And I'm a very visual person, John, so you'll have to forgive me. It'll feel like a tangent, but I promise I'll come back to it. But it feels like, for me, when you go through this journey of being more junior into leadership, is you are a butterfly. You start off as that caterpillar, you're eating away, you're doing all the things you need to do. You find yourself in a cocoon, and then you emerge as this butterfly. A lot of people neglect to realize that transformation journey they've gone on. And, I recommend everyone who's listening here today, sit and meditate with a cup of tea about how you've grown over the last 5 years, 3 months even. And then think about how you now portray yourself based off of that transformation. And it can be as simple as reviewing your resume, your CV, or your LinkedIn page. Does this now represent where you are in your journey? So many people I speak to on a daily basis, when they come to me and they say, Kat, I really need help with my brand. I'm not getting the jobs I want. I'm not being headhunted, yada, yada, yada. And I say, okay, well, it's really interesting to me that your photo is 25 years old. because you look like a junior analyst and the person who is on the Zoom meeting with me now looks a bit more senior, trying to put it delicately. And it's because they've just left it as it's a moment in time, it's frozen. And if your LinkedIn profile's doing that, I normally can guarantee your CV is doing that. So when you're applying to jobs for, things that you're more than experienced for, but you are presenting a brand and you're presenting yourself that's outdated, you kind of have to forgive the hiring managers for thinking, oh, they're not right for the job. But then it also goes beyond just kind of face value. When you turn up into a room, how are you communicating? How are you talking? One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they fall back into the comfort zone. And when I teach and lecture on this, I always talk about 3 zones. You've got your comfort zone, your growth zone, and your no zone. Comfort zone, everyone knows. That's the stuff you're happy talking about. No zone is stuff you would never discuss in a kind of professional capacity. That growth zone in the middle is really, really key and really, really important. And where I see people slip is they go from where they should be talking, which is about business value and business outcomes and really kind of talking about stuff that the business cares about. They slip into the comfort zone of data jargon. And this is where we go back into kind of that technical boots on the ground, grassroots stuff. And they start throwing out really technical jargon because it makes them feel more comfortable. But the business looks at them and goes, you may as well be speaking French to me. That makes no sense. That's scary. I'm going to walk away from you now. And therefore, we end up in a bit of a situation where your transformation, you've grown, you're doing the things, but now you are acting like the caterpillar when you're a butterfly. You have new capabilities now. You can float off and, find a beautiful flower to perch on for a photographer to take a photo of and put you on a lovely magazine because of what you've achieved. But you're acting like a caterpillar and you are limiting yourself. So it goes back to that mindset piece that I mentioned at the start. But equally, it's about understanding that you have grown, your experiences have grown. Don't fall into the trap of acting like a previous version of yourself, both in how you present yourself online, how you present yourself at conferences, how you present yourself at the board meetings. That's really hard to do. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, just act like the butterfly you are. It is really difficult. And we all have days where we're tired. The children have woken us up early. The dog's been barking since 9 a.m. You're really overstimulated. And you know what? You've jumped on this call and you're underprepared and you fall into the comfort zone and talk about things that you're very happy talking. We've all done that. But on a more general, more regular basis, we need to make sure that we are acting like the true version of ourselves. And there's lots of resources on that. And when I say that, I do want to put a slight asterisk as well to say that doesn't mean like acting like someone else's butterfly. You can look over there and see a bright blue one, but if you yourself are bright orange, you act in your way. And I know we were going to talk a little bit about female leadership and the stuff that we see in the market here today. Another mistake I see a lot of people make is they go and mimic another version. They see a really successful CDO over there or a head of data over here, and they go, that's working for them. I'm going to go do that. Inauthenticity is so obvious in 2025. You used to be able to get away with it a lot, and I think some people do still try. But with the growth of and the expectation of producing content on LinkedIn or on an internal intranet or however it may be, if they then turn up and meet you and you are more extroverted or introverted, or there's something slightly different about the way that you speak, it's really jarring, especially for hiring managers where they expect one thing and they get something else. So you don't want to start mimicking someone else's version of their transformation. You've got to stay authentic to yourself as well.
So, Kat, let's zoom in on something. I heard it all. So there's folk that are like, me with my picture of my long hair from in the 90s on my profile when I liked grunge music, and it was all good. Anyway, 25 years later, the hair is gone. I get that those things can be sorted out with a little bit of feedback, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understood the other parts, but let's zoom in on the introverts, right? So when you get one of the introverts come to you and you give them a clip round the ear, the photo gets updated, resume, LinkedIn looks a bit better, and they're probably quite loath to do leadership branding. Like, what are some of the tips for? I'm not categorizing all the data people in the world as introverted, but
No,
they exist. So, like, what sort of thing? If you were an introvert, I think the extroverts probably would just be like super excited and kind of work with you. What
yeah.
tips do you give the introverts to like upgrade their leadership branding when maybe it's not their tendency?
You know what? I would say the majority of people I end up working with are introverts. The extroverts, I kind of give a bit of guidance and kind of let them go off on their merry way. So I would say the majority of people that I do coach and work with are on the more introverted side. And I do believe it's a scale. I don't think it's binary. I think there's some that are kind of in that middle ground as well. Some of the advice I give, right? So when we think of leadership branding, we think of a spotlight, right? The spotlight is on us. And again, not wanting to generalize, but for introverted people, that can feel really intimidating. The last thing they want is a spotlight on them. So I always talk about moving the spotlight onto your team, or moving it onto a project, or moving it onto your organization. You don't need to be the spotlight. You can be the conduit of the spotlight. So you can talk about, we've been working on this really great project and this is the value we've seen. Or, isn't our data engineering team fantastic? Look at the work they've been doing. You are still shouting them out. It's your name, it's your photo that's being seen, but you are not necessarily, being on the spotlight, but you're kind of facilitating that. And often I actually think that style of branding works quite well, because it's less me, I'm fantastic, and more actually talking about the work that you're doing. So I think it's a good thing for anyone to do regardless. But the one piece of advice I do give very, very regularly is think about your goals. And then most people come onto the phone and I say, okay, why are we on the phone today, John? And you might say, oh, I'd love a promotion. Okay, cool. But why? Oh, well, there's a nice pay rise with that. Okay, cool. More money is always great, but why? Oh, actually, I'd like to be able to go on holiday. Anywhere particular? Really want to take my son to Disneyland Paris. Oh, cool. Any reason in particular? Oh my God, he loves Cinderella. He's absolutely into it. Now we've got the goal. Promotion is very vague and very, kind of, we all want one, right? We all want a pay rise. But what's very particular to you is that moment that your son looks at the big castle at Disney and goes, wow, this is amazing. And you get to go, I facilitated that. And what I get people to do is write that down on a post-it note and stick it somewhere that you can see it. And I've got one here with me now. And then anytime you're feeling that, and you mentioned the term earlier, imposter syndrome, or you're feeling that icky awkwardness about doing it, you've got to go present at this lunch and learn internally. You've got to increase your brand internally to, have the chance of being promoted. And you're going, oh, I don't want to do it. It's really horrible, icky, yuck. Flick your eyes to that post-it note and you go, oh yeah, that's nothing compared to what this goal is, because you've done the work and you've really synthesized it. It's not just I want a promotion, because you can back out of that and go, oh, in 6 months time, in 12 months time. But you look at that goal that's very, very specific and very niche to you, and you suddenly go, feeling kind of awkward about talking about stuff in front of a group of people versus this goal that means a lot to me. Suddenly that hedonistic calculus is outweighed. So that's something I really encourage everyone to do, is really, I always say, channel your inner toddler. Why? Okay, now we've got our goal. That's helpful, I think, to everyone. And extroverted people might be able to find their energy, and they get energy from people. Introverted people tend to find more energy from having that solo time. Be successful around yourself. If again, we'll stick with the lunch and learn, we know you've got to be up on stage talking to a room full of people. The next 3 hours, block your calendar, go and have lunch somewhere, or go for a walk on the canal at a conference. Be realistic to yourself. If you will find that environment challenging or overwhelming, then do something for yourself that can help you re-regulate and be more comfortable. And it also gives you a little bit of mental peace to know, okay, for this amount of time, for 45 minutes, I'm going to have to, really kind of engage in that room and really, share and learn. But I also know I've got the whole afternoon to do what I want to do and kind of replace that energy. Is my kind of top tips, I think.
Good. So, Kat, we're going to hit time soon, but on our prep notes we have female leadership, and I don't feel like we went over it. We don't went over it enough. So, can we, for a minute or two, like, what did you want to address on this topic, and so on?
So what's mental to me, John, is that even in 2025, and we're going to be entering 2026 in a heartbeat, we know that the number kind of fluctuates depending on who you speak to, but women in data, those sorts of organizations who do fantastic research, I believe the number is anything from about 16% to the highest I've ever seen. It was about 23% of all data leadership is female. That's a very, very low number. And when we think about when we attend events or when we listen to podcasts or when we read articles, that number is even smaller in terms of representation. So if you're listening to this as a data scientist and you walk this world as a woman, you will not see yourself as represented as if you walk this world as a man. That's just facts. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about imitating someone else's transformation. It's really difficult to carve your own path with limited examples in front of you because we don't live in a bubble. Society still happens. We know that women still are the majority caregivers at home. When little Timmy is sick at school, it's normally the mum that goes to pick them up. We know this. Maternity leave is still weighted in the female side of things rather than the male. We know this. These can all inhibit anyone's career, whether we talk about marketing, finance, whatever. In the data space, it means that we've got less people in front of us to show us how this is being done. But there's not a complete lack of anyone. And they're there and they're fantastic. I like to think here at Orbition, we do a pretty good job of highlighting the amazing female talent in our community. Each week, we run a campaign called The Woman to Watch. So we get our community to nominate in amazing women who are doing fantastic things in their organizations. And we highlight them and we say, hey, this is someone you should go and watch and go and see and go and learn from. And again, in our mentorship program, we allow people to come and access these fantastic people. A lot of the time, it's not for want of not wanting to see these people, not wanting to learn from them. It's having the lack of infrastructure. Generally speaking, a lot of events, organizations don't put enough effort, in my most humble of opinions, into making sure that the speaker capacity is diverse. And that goes beyond just female talent, but we can look at any kind of personalized characteristic. So I think it is really, really crucial that if you are listening to this as a junior female data professional, is that don't feel intimidated that there aren't as many of us in the data space. That's fine. But two, that there are lots of people you can go out and learn from and grow from. But then thirdly, don't feel you have to imitate your male colleagues, because that may have been the success story that you see more regularly of certain styles of leadership or certain ways of being. But you can be authentic to yourself and be very successful. And that I don't think gets spoken about enough.
Good. Well, it was spoken about now. So, Kat, thanks for taking us through that. We are hitting time, Kat. Normally what we would do here is recap of what we've spoken about, but I've lost the plot. There's spotlight, caterpillars, butterflies, hedonistic calculus. I've completely lost it. So I only say thank you for taking us through all that and for all your insights today. And I would love to have you back soon. Thank you, Kat.
Thanks, John.
Good. Ladies and gents, this was ML's Like Team Spirit.